Welcome back this week, everybody, to this week's episode of Maximum Octane. Today, I am super excited, as I always am, because as I tell you, it's all about me and my show, and I get to handpick who I want on here. So I really like everybody that I have. So joining me today is Mr. Andrew Neitlich, and he is the founder and the director of the Center for Executive Coaching. So thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. It's good to be here, Kim.
Thank you. So a few other things that you might find interesting about Andrew is he has an MBA and from Harvard University. So is Harvard all the hype that everybody
It is not. It is, and decreased. The business school is fantastic. I'm a little bit worried about the undergraduate place from what I hear, but the business school, I think, still remains an amazing place.
Okay. And speaking of undergrad, cultural anthropology, what in the heck is that?
It's really asking, it's a lot about studying different cultures. So so I got to study everything from small societies in the Amazon to doing some research on like some brokerage houses in the area and just interviewing about, what's the culture here? But, with businesses, it's about what kind of culture works, what kind of culture do you want, and things like that. So it's really looking at what does it mean to be human from the point of view of working in a society or living in a society and creating a culture.
Oh, and we are going to talk about the humans that are roaming around right now in just a moment. And so all of the links for Andrew, his LinkedIn and the Center for Executive Coaching will be in the comments for this episode. And Andrew has some pretty high profile clients, which I won't mention because of confidentiality. And your certification for coaching and school is international. I mean, I know you fly all over the world now to train coaches and speak and do those things. So,
yeah, we're in 32 countries and really keep working with more and more interesting people. So it's really turned into, it just grew organically and it's turned into a great way to make a living.
Did it? And I'm sure when you were sitting in Harvard, you were saying, this is what I'm going to do, right? So
absolutely not. It was pretty accidental, actually.
So
but it turned out to be right.
It turned out to be right. Sometimes things have a way of finding us in the right place at the right time. So sadly for you, you are one of my mentors and someone that I look up to. So you are the victim of some of my crazy emails and oh my God, I can't even believe heck do I do with this? So I thank you for that and your patience in dealing with me.
It's a pleasure.
Well, thank you. So today, why I wanted you to come on at such short notice. So thank you for that as well, because we had planned another time. There is a lot going on in the world. And you have a way of kind of cutting out the BS and just telling people the way it is. And I can't recall a time that there are so many armchair politicians and political analysts as what is going on in the world right now. And there is a serious thing going on with Russia and Ukraine, and how will that affect us? And what if we step in and all these world problems that none of us can do a damn thing about from where we're sitting at our business, but yet we're inserting ourselves into the conversations about it and giving advice on everything. So can you help me wrap my head around this and figure out how is this the best way to lead our people and run our businesses?
Sure. So, well, let me make sure I understand this right. You're saying that there's this crisis in Ukraine and Russia, and then yes, China's involved, and we have our country involved and Europe involved, and you're asking to tie this back to something going on with leaders of small businesses.
Correct. So that is exactly what I'm asking you.
All right, let me ask you. So what are the concerns of the leaders of small businesses as all of this is happening? You're saying they're distracted or this is getting in their way.
I would say there's both. So I would say what I am hearing now and in the coaching calls and different things going on, they seem to be much more concerned, the leaders of small businesses, with what is going on all over the world, which they should have awareness, but they are much more focused on how the presidents and NATO and everyone can solve the problems going on in the world instead of what the heck is happening right under their noses in their own business.
Right. So it's a smokescreen, one of many smokescreens that small business people raise to avoid accountability and to let it be a distraction from what they're supposed to be doing.
Exactly.
Right? Which is interesting, right? Because if you look at the geopolitical situation, one could argue that it was our own smoke screens that have allowed us to be in this position in the first place. That is not keeping our eye on the ball as a country. Now that's you and me being armchair quarterbacks, which is exactly what you're complaining about potentially. We don't need two more. Right?
Well, but we can do it. I can do it. I just don't think everybody else should. Yes. Because again, it's my show. So
right.
Yeah.
Makes sense to me. But it's interesting because the two are parallel, right? If we say what makes a strong company, we can also ask what makes a strong country. And there's lots of perhaps parallels in that, right? I mean, a strong country, we would say probably different things than what makes a strong company, but some are similar, right? You need to be financially strong. For instance, you have to know what you do well and what you don't do well. You can't try to do everything. You have to know when to be strong and set boundaries as a leader and when not to. And when you take your eye off that stuff, things happen. And other countries that are maybe thinking a little bit more from books like the 48 Laws of Power and the Art of War instead of, chicken soup for the soul are going to come in and start encroaching. And I think the same is true for a small business. Is what is it that you can control and what do you have to focus on for your success? I don't think I know who you coach, and most of the companies you're coaching probably don't have business interests in the Ukraine or Russia right now.
Not to my knowledge, no. Maybe they bought a crypto coin or something that came out of there and, put $1,000 in penny stocks or something. But other than that, no.
Right. And, I remember Warren Buffett when the pandemic hit, which, how many volatile and uncertain things do we need in a couple of year period? But what he said was, through it all, America has always survived. We have survived the Great Depression. We have survived World War II. We survived Vietnam. We survived the market crash of '87. We survived the dot-com crash. We survived the financial crisis, which really could have taken down our system. And now it looks like we had been surviving the pandemic pretty well. There's still challenges. So one way of being grounded is saying, listen, we are in the greatest country of all time if we don't let ourselves ruin it. And things are going to work out over the long haul. So we have to just focus on what is in our control. And what's in our control, if we're business owners, is having a really smart strategy, creating a really good culture, and taking care of our customers like never before. And that, by the way, is one of the big weaknesses after the pandemic. Is a lot of companies have an opportunity because so many other companies are dropping the ball on taking care of their customers.
They absolutely are. And it is a huge opportunity. And especially we got so much hands off and turned to electronic communication and, touchless paying, and the doors are locked to do everything over the phone. We really lost touch with how can we have that human interaction and making it personal, even if you're not shoulder to shoulder and all of that. So with the smoke screens, to get back to that for a moment, since you have studied all of these humans all over the world, why in the hell do small business owners and big ones keep putting up these smoke screens and paying attention to everything but what they need to be?
Yeah, it's a great question. Let me give a metaphor that's coming to mind. I played tennis with my 17-year-old kid this weekend, who by any standard should be wiping me off the court. He's just 6'3", I'm 5'10". He's stronger. He's hits the ball way harder. And you know what? He has a heck of a time. He beat me this weekend, but usually he loses. And when we look at why he loses, we'll talk in between and say, I'm playing the worst game ever. I can never hit a forehand. I didn't shower before the match, so that's a problem. When we switched sides and I saw the sun, I knew I was going to lose these two games. I mean, these are exactly the kinds of things coming out of his mouth. And the problem is he's not thinking straight. right? That we know from cognitive psychology, that's all or nothing thinking. It's thinking about stuff completely out of his control instead of focusing on what behaviors and what work effort do I need to put in now to wipe my dad off the court. And when I make a mistake, how do I, instead of blaming it and saying, I'm always this way, this is my fate, saying, maybe if I get to the ball one step earlier and don't hit with as much pace, I'm going to hit a good shot. But he wasn't doing that. And I think that's it. I think the human brain is flawed. It's just fundamentally flawed. We know this, and we have to train it. And the only way we can train it, I think, is by focusing on specifics without adding all the other stuff. And we have to get good at recognizing when we're adding other stuff versus, here's a conversation I have to have with someone, or here's a customer not being taken care of. I need to get on the ball and make this work. So I think that's really it. I think it's all this stuff. Our human brain just is not designed perfectly because of all the ways it's evolved and what it evolved from, which was survival. I think a lot of it has to do with that.
That is a great analogy. And I love the pun at the end about keeping your eye on the ball. That was very nice.
Oh, thank you. Unintentional too. Thank you.
That was nicely done. Nicely done. All right. So as a leader today, if you are trying to keep your eye on the ball and not be worrying about things you can't control, but your direct reports and people are coming in and they're like, oh my God, did you see the news last night? And I can, and oh my gosh, what's going to happen? What advice or suggestions do you have for leaders today in small businesses to sort of counteract that and set their people's minds at ease?
Right. Well, step one is for the leader to get grounded. Right. And from our work together, we have a tool called the Leader's Dashboard. I think every leader should have a dashboard that gets them grounded. Right. So one, what's my vision for this company? Where am I taking it? Everything should be about that. If you have a powerful enough vision that motivates you, no problem is going to be too big. That's number one. Two, why? Why are we doing this? That's one's mission. What's the reason? If you know why you're doing this, is it to take care of your family? Is it to create something you can sell? Is it because you're passionate about whatever work you're doing? Whatever the why is, you have to come up with that. So that's number two. Number three, we've got to get focused on what are the top three performance metrics. Like, how am I measuring my success? Is it revenue growth? Is it profit? Is it cash flow? Is it how much time I'm putting or not putting into the business? What are your goals? And then related to that, what are your top three initiatives to make those goals and your vision happen while supporting your mission? And that's it. If you have all of those things on paper, along with maybe a couple of things like who are the key relationships that I really have to nurture and what's one thing I can do to get better as a leader. But, imagine you had something like that on one piece of paper. Every day you come in, you look at that piece of paper. And so when an employee comes in and starts talking about, I'm distracted, I don't know what's going on in the world, you're going to look at the piece of paper and say, how closely related or not is what this person is saying to my agenda and what I want to create? So you need a dashboard. You need this thing that somehow just grounds you in what matters most for you as a business owner. And you might even need one for you as a person, separate from the business. And that's it. If it's not on that sheet, you don't do it and you don't tolerate it.
Love it. You make it sound so simple. See, that's why. Right. That's why I had to come on.
It's not that simple because it takes a lot of work. Here's another way to do it. This is, a 100-year-old strategy, but before you go home every night, write down the 3 to 6 things you're going to do the next day, no matter what. 3 to 6 things that are most important, the biggest priorities. And then when you come in the next day, that's all you do. That's all you do. Get those 3 to 6 things done. If you don't get them done, whatever you didn't get done moves to the top of the list. And that's it. You just need focus. You need blinders because it's so easy to get distracted in today's world. There's just too much going on, too much social media, too many people who have social media, too much news. It's just crazy. You remember, the old days, Norm Macdonald used to talk about this. The comedian, loved him. He's great. And he passed away, but he used to say,
so sad that I was so sad.
He's awesome. I get a lot. There's a lot of wisdom from comedians, and comedians, by the way, are some of the toughest business owners they are because they have to go through hell to succeed. But, he made a good comment. He said, back in the day, you had 30 minutes of news. That's all you had, right? You'd watch Dan Rather or whomever. Remember that? 7 to 7:30. Everyone just watched that news. And he said sometimes they had a hard time filling a half hour. And today it's 24 hours nonstop. And because there's not enough news, it becomes editorials, and they're all trying to get eyeballs, and they're trying to scare the hell out of us, no matter which side of the aisle the news station happens to be on. And that's what's going on. If you know the 6 things you have to do tomorrow, the news goes away. You don't have time for it. If you have your leader's dashboard down and ready to go, you don't have time for it. Stephen Covey talked about that. Having a mission statement for every part of your life is another way to do it.
So with having a leader's dashboard, if you're grounded, you know what your goals are, you're not getting sidetracked because you have that tool or grounding. What is the best way for a leader to say to the person that comes in their office and, starts going off, then other than, what the hell are you talking about? This doesn't interfere. This is not part of my mission. So stop talking. How would you facilitate that conversation?
So you're saying someone just comes in and starts ranting. I'm scared. What's going on with Russia?
Scared, or I'm mad. And, if I was the president, I would be doing this, and we don't have any business being in other countries, and, the normal things that people fill their day speaking about now.
Yeah. Well, if it's look, if it's a one-time thing and it's a crisis, maybe we have to handle it, right? But if it's somebody who just keeps doing stuff like this, what I'm going to say is, look, I appreciate your concern about this. It sounds like you're really passionate about it, but our mission here is to serve our customers, or, whatever it is that this person's role is. And I just say, help me understand, how does this relate to Joe, who's out there waiting for us to service his car? Or whatever the business is. I think there's just a time where the leader, you get what you tolerate. As a leader, you have to ask yourself, what am I doing that is attracting these people to come to me and feel like they can dump unrelated problems onto my lap? You're doing something. I worked with a client in a really big healthcare system, and we did a time study of how she spent her time. She was trying to move up and needed some leadership presence. It turned out like about half her time was employees would come into her office and dump their problems on her lap, but she loved it. She called herself the mother hen. And she would spend hours with employees. And so part of the coaching was about saying to an employee, look, if you come in with a problem, your job is to say to them, I appreciate it. What I want is a solution. Come in with 2 options. Tell me which one you like, and we could talk about that. But I don't need all the background, and you can't ask me to solve your problem. I'm trying to create leaders here. So that's a way to do it too.
All right. So now I'm going to ask you something that's really going to make your socks in a knot, because here's the number one thing that we hear when we give that counseling or advice. And, oh, no, I can't say that to anybody because then they'll just quit, and you can't find anybody. Those dang millennials and Gen Zs don't want to work. So if they want to come in and talk about that nonsense, I just let them, because I can't afford to upset them.
Right. Well, I don't know. You can't coach someone who's not coachable, right? Good for you that you've made your choice, right? One of the first rules for me as a coach is I can give observations, but once the client tells me they want to go in a different direction, we move to something else. And I'll say, what would you like to explore about this? What else do you want to talk about? Would you like to look at the costs of this? Would you like to look at what else you could be spending your time doing? I wouldn't ask all of that at once. But these might be. Because
that would be a stacked question.
A stacked question. That's right. You can't. The client can't focus on more than one question at a time. So that's it. Like, sometimes we care more than our clients as coaches, and so here, this isn't so much like what do you do as a coach for me. It's more, look, you want to be a good leader or don't you? And do you really want an employee that is wasting your time anyway? Right. And I understand it's hard to find good employees, but I feel like, a workplace is a workplace, and we're here to be productive. What I've learned, from the research I've looked at, what most people want to do is come to work, do their job, and go home. They really don't want to be encumbered by stuff that leadership puts on them, like unnecessary processes, unnecessary paperwork. And they also don't want to be seen as someone who contributes to inefficiency that keeps others from coming in, doing their job, and going home. It's just work. Come in, do your job, go home. Of course, we can create a culture. We can, help people relate. So, I understand what you're saying. And maybe if the leader says, well, I have to do it, then we say, good, you just have to budget that time with all the other stuff. So you're going to have to be there a couple of extra hours, and just know this is something you've said is important. It creates the culture. It retains employees. So just add 2 extra hours to your day and know that there's nothing you can do about that. That's a choice too.
It sure is. It sure is. But you know where that goes. They don't want to do the extra time or the other work or the other stuff that goes.
And that gets back to teenage tennis. Because here's something my kid said. He said he plays pushers and he loses because he just tries to hit the ball and it goes out and he's impatient. And so I say, I say, look, it's easy to beat a pusher. Just keep the ball in play. You hit with a little more pace. Eventually they'll give you a ball. You can hit it and get an edge, come up to net and put it away. He says, nah, that's too much work. I'll be too tired. So he just chooses he's going to tree the ball. So he's not beating people he knows he's better than, right? It's the same, it doesn't change. Teenagers become, I guess, owners of small businesses and let their employees come in and waste their time because it's too much work not to.
It is so hard when things like that with it, as you know, I have two sons too, but the non-competitive people like that are willing to, whether it's in business or a game or anything else, to just say, you know what, I am willing to lose because I don't want to put in that work. It is some days very challenging for me to put
here's
my
another
head
thing,
out.
right? My wife brings this up a lot, right? There's a bell curve. It's a bell curve. There's a bell curve of intelligence. There's a bell curve of work ethic. And there's therefore a bell curve of success. There's no way around it. Half the people are on the left side of the bell curve, right? Half the people aren't as smart as the other half. Half the people aren't going to work as hard. And guess what? At least half the people aren't going to be as successful. So, sometimes what the owner of the business is really saying is, I don't have what it takes.
Yes, that's for sure.
That's not, I understand that as coaches, the coaches you work with are hired regardless, and you have to accept the good blueberries and the bad blueberries. But in real life, you know what? Some businesses aren't going to make it. Capitalism is about creative destruction, and nothing's going to destroy you faster than laziness, ineptitude, or incompetence unless you're in government.
You just brought that full circle.
Well, it comes back to that, right? The geopolitical environment exists because of our elected officials. Well, business people too, but yeah.
And that's the thing. And it's so frustrating, as you know, is when you hear a small business owner say, oh, no, I want to be the best, or I want to create the best culture for my team, or I want to, achieve this goal. And then they watch the news and their whole entire day or week becomes talking about what happened on the news instead of focusing on keeping their eye on the prize. So,
well, it is interesting, though. It does raise a bigger issue, right? I think we're better when the leaders we have as role models are better, right? And there is I play tennis with a guy super wealthy and super successful. And he's saying, like, if I were starting my business today, I don't know if I'd start it. Like, I don't know why I wouldn't just go into government and just get a position where I don't have to work so hard and I can't be fired and that kind of stuff. I mean, the culture is changing, right? It really is hard. It is. You are a hero, I think. Not a hero like a military hero, but it takes a form of courage and stoicism to be a business leader in an environment where you're vilified, where people are trying to take more and more from you, where people think it's all about entitlement and you didn't actually earn it, you didn't build that, all of that stuff. And so it's hard. Where do we go to find role models that make us proud? And so I can understand it too, right? Part of it is the overall context of a nation, and certainly this is a time where one has to empathize with business owners because it's like, why bother? They just want to take more from us. No one else is working hard. I mean, I understand all those complaints. So the question comes back to, what's your vision? Why did you get into business? What drives you? I do it all the time. Like, I could retire right now, but I love what I do. Even talking to you right now is something I love doing. And I love the clients and I love building the business, and I'm working on another business. It's just something I really enjoy. There'll come a point where if the government decides it wants to take more, I'll just say that's enough. You're a terrible business partner and I don't want you anymore. Right. But
you're fired as a business partner.
You're fired.
No
right,
longer
fire
like
government.
these terms.
That's right. It's exactly how it will be. Right. I heard, what do we have to work till now? If you're pretty successful, you have to work somewhere till like July, I think, to pay off the government, and then the rest is yours.
It is crazy when you look at those numbers. And sadly, so many entrepreneurs and business owners are just closing their doors, saying, I can't, I'm tired, and I can't keep fighting an uphill battle. And between government stuff, taxes, trying to hire people, trying to retain people, the whole people getting handouts and not having to go back to work because they're getting, it's so sad. I mean, it's really heartbreaking for me to see that spark starting to disappear.
It's awful. Well, look at the retail stores where you see the images on TV of people coming in and taking, thousands of dollars of merchandise and walking out. So the point is, we have to avoid cynicism. Our job is to find, we are the producers. Without us, it all shuts down. Right? It's not government. There's no dollar you pay to government that leads to anything. You're just taking a dollar away from one and giving it to someone else, often someone who doesn't spend it as effectively as a business person. It is the business people who created this society, who created the wealth that makes this society possible. And we can't forget that. We are making an incredible contribution, even if others don't realize it. And so for me, it's just, we got to get back to why are we doing this? Even if it's just, I'm supporting my family. I want a comfortable retirement. That's it. That's the American way. Right now we are living through what Ayn Rand would call the politics of low self-esteem, where everybody, we are not good. Everybody else is better. We must apologize. We must give. We must feel guilty. That is a horrible way to live, in my opinion. And so, what's great about business people is we're the creators and we're the producers. We make things happen, and it's our wealth, even if it's modest, that pays the taxes that allows those people to do what they're doing. The question is whether it's sustainable or not long term, but short term, we just got to keep at it. You can't be cynical, because that does nothing for us. All that does is, sort of serve as a defense mechanism that protects us from being accountable at the end of the day.
Well said. Well said. Well, I really appreciate your time here today.
We're done.
We are done. We are. We can talk more, but I try to keep these to a half an hour.
All right. Well,
but you said you're going to come back because you like talking to me. So
I do.
We have a ton of topics we can talk about, but this one I wanted to get out right away because I see everybody getting down in the weeds of things they cannot control. And
right.
My
Stay
gosh.
the course. We need you. We need business people, and we need good ones. The comedian Aziz Ansari has a Netflix special. It's okay. But somewhere in there, he says, what happened after the pandemic is everything's just a little shittier. Everything just a little bit shittier, because all these employees went to their employers and said, pay me more, take care of me. The employer said no. So they left and they went somewhere else, and the employers had to hire someone not as good. Everything's a little bit worse right now. And so there's a huge opportunity for a smart business person to say, you know what, we're going to up the game. We're not going to tolerate this. We're going to bring it back to pre-pandemic, and we are going to crush the market because of it. So stay the course. There's tons of opportunity in this market, because while other people are giving up, you don't have to be the one giving up. You need to move forward and just raise the bar. Just keep raising the bar. That's what made our country great and continues to make our country great for those who are willing to do it.
You are absolutely hitting the nail on the head with that. We've seen so many of our shop owners taking advantage of businesses closing up around them and warehouses and, buying them cheap and converting them into shops and really expanding their footprint. And, even opening multiple stores, and they didn't even think they wanted them, but the deals were coming up and these people are going out of business and they're seizing the opportunity.
Listen, that's Intel's strategy. Intel, the chip maker, they're being overtaken a little bit now, but for decades, they were the leader, because every time there was a market downturn, they would buy out their competitors, and they kept growing and growing and growing. And they're one of the greatest companies ever historically. So there's no reason small business people can't follow that example. Anyway, you said we're done. I'm here anytime, and I've enjoyed it.
All right. And I will send you another link so we can reschedule. So I really appreciate you being here and kind of cutting through some of the crap right now that's going on. And I couldn't think of anybody better to just be like not dancing around and saying
there's
kumbaya.
No dancing. No one wants to dance with me, I assure you.
Kumbaya and everybody do all that. So
we don't need that.
We don't need that now. We need everybody to take action and stop whining.
Buckle down, because it could get a lot worse. This is nothing. Imagine what happens if we treat China the same way we treated Russia. and we keep caving into them. Imagine how bad it's going to be when those two get together and decide they've had enough of us. We're not done. We need, if we give up here, we deserve to lose. This is not the time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So everybody keep on going the good fight and be a good example. Andrew, you mentioned that we need role models, and that starts with in-house. You have to be the role model that you want your people to follow and look at. You can't, not do what you want them to do, right? And do what you want them to say. So I really appreciate you being here. And I enjoyed this. And if anybody wants a copy of the Leaders Dashboard that Andrew was talking about, you could email me, and the link is down the bottom.